Mom, Dad, listen to me. She's my wife. Her insurance money belongs to me. I get to decide what I want to do with it, alright? You idiot! Everything in this house belongs to me. I paid for your wedding and your living expenses. Who the hell do you think you are?
Lower your voice, dear. You're at the funeral house nevertheless.
I don't give a damn. Listen, son, you're making a big mistake. If you want to invest, pour your money into the family business. Father, the way you think is simply outdated. I want to spend it my way. I want real estate, alright? End of discussion.
I'm sorry. Are you talking about how you're going to spend Sally's insurance money at her funeral?
Stay out of this, Holly. You're not even a family member. You're never around anyway.
How could you say that? Your wife just passed away.
Where the hell is her husband? Get her out of here, for God's sake.
Holly dear, we're having a family discussion. Why don't you help us take care of the guests outside? You people are unbelievable. My name is Holly, and I'm in my 30s. I was born and raised in a middle-class family, so I worked hard to achieve my goals. I always had a passion for learning and decided to pursue a double degree in business management and social work. It was during my college years that I met my husband, Alex. Alex was charming, funny, and a great listener. We quickly hit it off and started dating. I remember how he always made me feel special and how he never bragged about how rich his family was. In fact, I didn't even know about it. It wasn't until we graduated and started planning our future together that Alex finally told me about his family's wealth. I was taken aback but decided not to let it affect our relationship. I loved Alex for who he was, not for his family's money. We got married a year after graduation and started our life together. Alex had always been clear that he didn't want to inherit his family's business. He wanted to make a name for himself and build his own legacy. I admired his determination and supported him every step of the way. After the wedding, my husband and I decided to move very far away from his family. Alex wanted to distance himself from the family business and focus on building his own career. We settled in a new city and started our new life together. We didn't see Alex's family very often, but we hung out with Alex's brother and sister-in-law Sally from time to time. Sally was a breath of fresh air. She was kind, genuine, and had a heart of gold. I really enjoyed spending time with her, and we quickly became good friends. Sally and I had a lot in common. We both loved to read, cook, and travel. We would often share recipes and travel tips with each other. I felt like I could talk to her about anything, and she was always there to listen. As we got to know each other better, I learned that Sally had a difficult childhood. Her parents had passed away when she was young, and she was raised by her grandparents. Despite the challenges she faced, she never lost her positive outlook on life. She was always smiling and radiated joy wherever she went. Unfortunately, I didn't get to be around Sally as much as I wanted to. On a day that I'd probably never forget, I received a call from my husband's brother with some devastating news. Sally had passed away in a terrible accident while the whole family was on vacation. I was completely shocked and devastated upon hearing about Sally's passing. It was too sudden. It felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. My husband and I immediately made plans to travel back to his hometown so that we could attend Sally's funeral. The journey felt long and somber, and I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness in my heart. When we arrived, I expected to be met with tears and sadness from the entire family, because Sally must have touched the lives of so many people that her loss should be felt deeply by everyone. However, completely different from what I had expected, my husband's family was cold. It was as if Sally's passing had brought out the worst in them. They barely acknowledged our presence and seemed more concerned with the logistic aftermath of the accident than with supporting each other on Sally's memory. I felt like an outsider, even though I had known Sally and had grown close to her over the years. It was a painful realization that sometimes the people we expect to be there for us in times of need can let us down the most. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I accidentally overheard a conversation between Sally's husband with his parents. As I walked past their private room, I couldn't help but notice the screaming coming out of it. They were so reckless they didn't even think of closing the door. "Mom, Dad, listen to me. She is my wife. Her insurance money belongs to me. I get to decide what I want to do with it, alright? You idiot. Everything in this house belongs to me. I paid for your wedding and your living expenses. Who the hell do you think you are?" Lower your voice, dear. You're at the funeral house nevertheless.
I don't give a damn. Listen, son, you're making a big mistake. If you want to invest, pour your money into the family business. Father, the way you think is simply outdated. I want to spend it my way. I want real estate, alright? End of discussion.
I was completely in shock. I couldn't believe what I had heard with my own ears. I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that Sally's family was more concerned about her insurance money than anything else. Filled with grief and anger, I pushed the door and walked in. "I'm sorry, are you talking about how you are going to spend Sally's insurance money at her funeral?"
Stay out of this, Holly. You're not even a family member. You're never around anyway.
How could you say that? Your wife just passed away.
Where the hell is her husband? Get her out of here, for God's sake.
Holly dear, we're having a family discussion. Why don't you help us take care of the guests outside? You people are unbelievable. I immediately walked out of there feeling sick to my stomach and couldn't believe that these were the same people who had been a part of Sally's life. When I told my husband what I had overheard, I was still filled with disbelief. I couldn't understand how Sally's family could be so callous and indifferent to her passing. It made me question whether or not her accident was actually an accident at all. The thought of foul play was unsettling, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was heartbreaking to see that her own family couldn't care less about the fact that they had lost her forever. Then, I thought about how Sally was an only child, and both her parents had passed away. So she had no family but me and my husband. I was sobbing when I told Alex about my feelings. He had to hug me for a very long time and promised to talk to his family to figure things out on her behalf. Realizing that my in-laws couldn't care less about Sally, I wanted to be the one who kept her memory alive. I approached my parents-in-law and asked them if I could keep some of Sally's belongings to remember her. They seemed so indifferent and told me that I could get anything from her bedroom. When I walked into Sally's room, I was filled with sadness. I realized that it was a separate room from her husband's bedroom, meaning they hadn't shared a bed for a while now. I laid down on her bed and couldn't help but start crying. I had never thought she had been unhappy. When I was doing to get up, I felt something strange in the pillow. I lifted it to see if anything was there. To my surprise, I discovered a notebook and voice recorder. I was hesitant to invade her privacy, but I couldn't resist the urge to listen to her voice and read her thoughts. Something in my gut told me that there were secrets that needed to be revealed, and so I grabbed both of them and brought them home with me. That evening, I waited for my husband to go to bed. Before going to the living room to listen to her recording and go through what seemed to be her diary. I didn't know why I didn't want to share that with my husband. After all, it was his family Sally was dealing with. What I found in Sally's recorder was so much worse than what I could ever think of. In there, she detailed all the secrets going on in the house, about how our parents-in-law had been avoiding taxes, taking advantage of poor people, and, worst of all, ripping off people's properties and leaving them to die in poverty. She was so depressed because she couldn't stop what was happening. When she tried talking to her husband, he became very violent. On some occasions, she had been hurt to the point that she passed out for a few hours. All this was recorded and hidden because she believed that someday she would find a way out of this mess. I realized that it was something that Sally had never shared with anyone, not even her closest friend or family members. Perhaps she had felt like she couldn't trust anyone, including me. It was a heartbreaking realization, and my heart ached for Sally. She had been living in fear, trapped in a toxic relationship with a man who didn't value her life or her well-being. I couldn't help but feel angry and frustrated at the injustice of it all. How could someone treat another human being with such cruelty and disregard? The more I learned about Sally's situation, the more determined I became to seek justice for her and to ensure that her memory would not be forgotten. I was so close to waking my husband up and letting him know of this evidence, but then I came to a part of Sally's diary where she mentioned my dear husband Alex. It turned out that she had asked my husband for help multiple times, but he cold-heartedly turned her down. One time, she had even driven all the way to our house and begged Alex to take her in, but all he did was leave her out in the cold. I must have been sleeping at that point, but that had made Sally feel like I, too, was on Alex's side. It was painful. I couldn't believe it. The man I fell in love with was actually not the kind, warm-hearted person I thought he was. I remembered all the time Alex had told me about how he didn't want to be in touch with his family too often. I thought it was because of how materialistic they were. It turned out that he just wanted to be out of trouble. He knew what was going on, and he turned a blind eye to it. I was completely devastated. But I knew what to do. I had to end this and bring justice back to Sally, even though it was already too late. I called the police immediately and turned in Sally's diary and voice recorder. I called my parents and asked them to stay at their place throughout the entirety of the investigation. I felt a sense of relief when I turned in Sally's diary and voice recorder to the police. But not long after, the guilt washed over me. I was reporting my husband and his whole family for very serious crimes. They were immediately brought to the police station, and I realized that my life would never be the same anymore. I had probably lost my husband, my best friend, and my life partner. It was painful. The police took the evidence seriously and launched an investigation into Sally's death. It was a long and difficult process, but in the end, they were able to confirm what I had suspected all along, that her accident was not an accident at all, but a deliberate act of violence. The police were able to find camera footage that supported Sally's claim, and they were able to build a case against her husband. On that fateful trip, it turned out that Sally's husband had locked her in their room after some minor disagreement. Due to her weak physicality and the heated weather, she tragically passed away. There was no accident, just a horrible crime. It was a difficult and emotional trial, but in the end, justice was served. Sally's husband was found guilty of her murder and was sentenced to life in prison. My parents-in-law and my husband were all put into jail as accomplices. It was a bittersweet victory, but I felt a sense of closure knowing that Sally's memory had been vindicated. Her voice had been heard and her story had been told. I knew that she would have been proud of what I had accomplished in her name. Needless to say, I made the difficult decision to divorce my husband and start anew. It wasn't an easy process, but I knew that it was the right thing to do for myself and my future. In honor of Sally's memory and the lessons she had taught me, I decided to start a nonprofit organization that would help other women who were experiencing domestic violence and abuse. I named it the Sally Foundation, and it quickly gained recognition and support from people all over the world. Through the Sally Foundation, we were able to provide resources and support to women who were struggling with toxic relationships, as well as advocate for the changes in laws and policies that would better protect victims. It was a challenging and rewarding experience, and I knew that Sally would have been proud of the work we were doing in her name. I feel like I have finally found a consistent motivation in life. Now that I'm doing something so meaningful for my community, I thank Sally every day for having appeared in my life and changed it forever.